There has always been, until now, a large gap in the technology of Shulker box loaders. Let's take this one as an example. You might remember this since I posted it a few years back, and it's still one of the most compact Shulker box loaders out there. This one is using a system to load them at twice the speed of a single hopper by using this dropper that gets powered every 4 game takes. So let me show you how it roughly looks like when it's working. So let's load a couple of these. You can see this is pretty fast. And people have been using this for a while now because they have realized that not only does this make it less necessary to build much, but also because, especially in high performance applications where you have large mob farms, for example, that produce millions of items per hour, you need to process them as quickly as possible, because items, as you might know, if I just throw it here, they are entities if they are in this state, even in water streams, and this causes significant lag. So people have realized that what you can do with machines like this, you can actually have half as long water streams. That sounds rather useful, right? Like, since at some point the length of the water stream, reducing the lifetime of the items, will probably outweigh the benefits of 1x hopper speed loaders, which are generally much less laggy. And yeah, if you think about it this way, you can have 10 blocks long water stream with effectively 20 times hopper speed processing. However, if you look at this, some of you probably realize what this video is going to be about. It's about the idea you can actually have this even shorter, like this. This is still 10 hoppers, so effectively, if I would somehow figure out how to stack this, so we still the same rate at processing the items, however, half as long. And I can show you this works fairly easily. I use the Shulker box, but that doesn't matter. All items behave the same in this sense. This is made even more convenient with the 1.13 and later versions of water mechanics. So what blocks me from doing that with this? Well, obviously it's this column of blocks right here. Right, like if I would want to mirror this, I would have to, like, the best I could do is something like this, and there is no way to move the items over both of these hoppers at the same time. So what I did is I made a version which doesn't have this limitation. As you can see, this can be comfortably stacked. There are no blocks that interfere. Even this mechanism is made in such a way it doesn't affect the adjacent slice in this direction. This is still one-way tileable. This example here is using the same sort of local clock as here. What local clock means is each of these slices has its own thing that triggers the stopper, so they can be out of sync, which is usually preferable, since that way you are triggering less things. But in some applications you might want to have a global clock, which would look something like this. You can see they're powered, and now can simply decide which ones are getting powered. Obviously, this is for game ticks. This is not for game ticks, this is 6, but whatever, it serves the demonstration well. This one is using local, since, like I said, it's usually preferable. It uses a quite different mechanism there. This one uses the zero ticking of this piston when it retracts this observer here to make sure this box gets destroyed and replaced fast enough so no items get fired in. Because if I would not have this box here and this clock would be running, it would be just throwing out items and losing them, or even putting them into the same place where the boxes go, which is definitely not something we want. This one uses a slightly different design. It uses also this sort of optimization, which is really nice. As far as I can tell, this was first used by a guy called Puzzle, who is one of the only people who ever managed to improve upon some of my designs. He managed to make this thing a bit taller but less wide, which results in overall a smaller surface area using that trick. It had a few downsides, but it's currently the smallest double speed one, so this one is definitely not anymore. What then happens is, obviously we have still a T flip-flop here, and also this part, which triggers all these droppers, because we somehow need to not have the feeding cube for empty boxes on this side, we need to do it here. So I just use this curved design here. This is hard powering this dropper here, but it doesn't matter since it happens before this T flip-flop, it gets triggered twice. Once when the box is full and the second time when it gets broken. So thereby, and especially since you have here quite a bit of leeway, this won't ever be an issue. Then there is this one repeater. It looks like it's not necessary here. Like, why not just put a block here and move this like this, right? Should do the trick, right? Well, no. And this is a trick that has been used for a very long time, and that's the fact that repeaters get for some reason processed before observers. That's why this clock here is always using only observers here. You could use maybe some trapdoor in between, and I'll deal with that at the end of the video. So what happens is, because of just having in this whole chain of blocks a repeater, it will cause this to not spill items. I can show you that working right now. You can see no item was ejected anywhere. Let's fire a few more. Obviously, this dropper here also gets triggered by this. And then this simply powers both the dispenser for the boxes and the piston at the same time. Nothing really new. Just the combination of this repeater and this sort of cube here allows this kind of design to have half the length of the water streams a design like this would need. As far as I can tell, this is as optimized as it gets. Like, you aren't ever going to be able to make this even shorter unless there is somehow some way to put an item in between three hoppers, which I don't think there ever really will be. And as far as I can tell, nobody really did this. I scrolled through the entire storage archive. I looked up videos, even non-one-white tileable designs, which were pretty popular at some point, where it effectively used 6x hopper speed loaders, but they were obviously 3 blocks wide. Even those didn't have this feature. The only alternative to this that previously existed was the 8 hopper speed loaders, but those are a lot more janky than this one. They also, at least I couldn't find one that had filters on it. Like, yeah, you could put some on the top of them, and that would be pretty ridiculously sized. And as far as I can tell, this is practically just as good. It's probably even less laggy than some of them, and far easier to build, and also much easier to understand. So let me also mention where you don't want to build this sort of thing. I made this to be practically as compact as it gets. I don't think you can make this much smaller. You might be able to do something with the new copper bulbs, or using some kind of special clock here, and maybe making this 1 block less wide, and maybe make it taller or something like that. You could maybe do something like that, but this is generally optimized to be small. So unlike some of my other designs, which are optimized for absolute minimum lag, this is generally optimized to be very compact, since, like I said, at some point the sheer amount of items overwhelms any sort of lag that is caused by the mechanism itself. And this sort of mechanism here is really low lag in general, since it triggers only once every 1,700 items. So this clock here is generally the most stressful part for a server. You could also just remove the filtering here if you wanted to. But there's an interesting thing about these 2x speed loaders. With a filter or without a filter, they are basically the same. They don't really get any smaller, or they get a little cheaper. That's pretty much all that happens there. Not even the lag really matters much, since the filter itself doesn't cause much. You would want to use something like this in a, as I mentioned, large scale, where you have really maybe hundreds of these built in a row with so many items of similar types. You don't want to use this for a storage system, obviously, where you have the exact opposite, where you have 1,000 different items, but you only get them rather slowly. You want to make this for large farms, for example. You can also change this slightly. If you don't want to have it fed by this hopper line here, you can do something like this. And have a water stream going lengthwise, which is also a really nice option. I don't think you can really fit a dropper line into this, but yeah. As I established in my lag tests, dropper lines are generally more laggy at full speed compared to hopper lines. So yeah, I think that's all for this video. I hope you enjoyed me figuring something out that previously people haven't built. Maybe someone can find a use for this in their large-scale projects. And have a nice day. Please like, subscribe, share it with others, all the YouTube stuff. And I'll leave you at that.